Hello artists and welcome to day 75 of the Epic Journey. I'm DaleneFM and today we're going to get started on the impressionistic paintings. So before I get started on the painting, I just want to chat to you a little bit about Impressionism and relative to what it is that I'm going to paint. As we've discussed before, Impressionism is about painting one's impression of something. So I'm going to show you on the screen now what it is that I'm going to paint, and it's going to flash on the screen because I want you to feel an impression rather than study the image. So here goes. Did you see that? Should we do it again? Right. I'm not going to give it to you anymore. That's what I'm going to paint, and I'm going to paint an impression of it. Now what I've just done with you, I've done the same thing with myself. I've allowed myself to look at it for a short time, and then I've turned it over so that I'm not looking at it again, and then I've thought about it and I've created an impression about it in my mind, and that's what I'm going to try to put down onto canvas. So let me quickly take you through the colors that I'm going to use, and then while you're watching me work I will continue to talk. Right, I'm going to go through my palette with you. We've got sap green, permanent rose, burnt umber, permanent green, French ultramarine, Carillion blue, zinc white, dioxazine purple, chrome yellow, and cad yellow dark. So Impressionism, like we've discussed before, is not a specific brushstroke. It's not a specific style. It incorporates all sorts of things like pointillism and little juxtapositions and you know, nice big broad brush strokes. The aim of Impressionism is it's more about what it is that you're trying to do, not how you're doing it. I think what I understand about Impressionism more than anything else, and I'm talking for myself here, is that a lot of the work that we do in today's art, sort of modern Impressionism, is very similar to the work that was done back in the Impressionistic era in the 1850s and onwards. The difference between what we're doing now and what was being done then is that then it was groundbreaking. It was something very different to what was being done before, so it was quite controversial. The problem, in inverted commas, is that today it gets done all the time. A lot of artists are doing it, so we don't necessarily recognize what is being done now as Impressionism. We also tend to relate Van Gogh to Impressionism, or Cézanne to Impressionism, or we relate pointillism or juxtaposition. So we tend to think that to be able to paint like an impressionist, you've got to paint in dots, or you've got to paint in lines like Van Gogh, or you've got to paint in muted colors like Monet, or you've got to paint in bright colors like Van Gogh did. There's things about the Impressionists that we tend to relate, okay, that's what Impressionism is, but what we really need to understand is that's what it was at the time, but that didn't define Impressionism. Impressionism was defined by the fact that they weren't painting the ideal representation of something. They were trying to create the impression that they felt if you had, say, caught a glimpse of something as you were passing by, it was the impression that that made on you emotionally. That's what they were trying to portray. We went through this in the other lesson the other day, so I'm not going to go into too much more detail about that. But the reason I'm just recapping here quickly is because what I'm trying to do here with this painting is to create the impression of this particular little landscape and not try to emulate a specific style. Like, I'm not going to do specifically a Renoir or specifically a Cézanne or specifically a Van Gogh or whatever the case may be. I do tend to quite naturally be a little bit Renoirish in my brushstroke and stuff, so it might end up unintentionally looking like that, but that's not what my intention is. I'm not attempting to emulate an impressionist, a specific impressionist. I'm attempting to create an impression of what I feel about that particular image. This image was not a photograph that I took. It's one of the few paintings that I'm going to do that does not involve a photograph that I took. And I did that very specifically because I can't take photographs. I'm not a photographer to that extent that can capture that beautiful direct on sunlight. So I actually bought this image because I wanted to give this painting the best chance that it has to accurately try to get across what I'm trying to get across here. Now I do hope that I get this painting right in terms of being able to create the impression of it. So what I'm going to try to do is to avoid getting bogged down in detail, and especially on the top left hand corner where there's sort of naked tree branches and stuff, one can end up spending a lot of time trying to get every little stick correct. I'm going to, on purpose, try and avoid doing that. What I'm doing now on the first layer is color blocking. You've heard me talk about it when I did the little seascape, for example. It's just color blocking, and I'm color blocking with a purpose. Now, if you had a look at the palette that I laid out before, there's a lot of complementary colors. You'll see on my palette I laid out the green and the red next to each other because they're opposite one another on the color wheel. You'll see I laid out the yellow and the purple next to each other because they're opposite one another on the color wheel. That's because my intention is to try to employ the tactics that the Impressionists did employ, where they used a lot of juxtaposition. I'm going to try and bring that in as much as I can. That won't necessarily be very evident on the first layer, but as it goes along, so I will be able to do that. So right at the moment, I'm really just scribbling the image in and trying to already start bringing out the impression of that really bright mood that is coming straight on you from the middle of the canvas. Because to me, that is the impression of that is this, like I can almost hear angels singing as the sun rises. It sounds a little bit weird. So from a technical point of view, like you saw there, the colors that I laid out on the palette, and the oil was 2575, and I've made it quite, because there's a lot of terps in it, so I've made it quite watery, if you want to call it that. I've diluted it quite a lot. I haven't been fussed about mixing colors at all. In fact, I've tried to use the colors almost straight out of the tube, because that is also something that the Impressionists did. They used their colors relatively pure. And naturally, while painting on the canvas, the colors would have mixed a bit, but I didn't mix any colors on the palette itself to try and maintain the purity of the color. So what I'm attempting to do on this painting is actually incredibly different from what I was attempting to do on the glazed portrait, where I was focusing quite heavily on detail, because that's what defined glazing. And now I'm trying to almost ignore the detail, but not to the point that it becomes abstract, but it's still very representative, but that the detail doesn't become the focus of attention on this painting. It's rather the emotional content of the painting is far more important than the detail. So over the next couple of days we'll watch this little painting progress. So hopefully I'll be able to communicate what Impressionism was all about. So stay tuned to see this painting developed. In the meantime, please will you like and share and subscribe and share it around the internet and do whatever you do with my videos. And I thank you for joining me, and I will see you tomorrow in day 76 with the next layer of this painting. Bye! That's what you want to do.